3.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Idiomatic Top 3.
With Nicholas, I'm the video game correspondent for Idiomatic.
And I am Dimitri, editor-in-chief of Idiomatic.com and movie critic. And what are we talking about today, Nick?
Franchise killers. So basically we're going to make this podcast so bad it's going to kill the top 3. And we're never going to see those ever again until...
Considering how low our standards are to begin with, I think that's going to be hard.
That's just going to give us a reason to reboot the next week.
Yes, that's right. We are talking about movies or whatever that killed pretty much the franchise, making the next entry really hard to make. One caveat about it, obviously nothing really kills a franchise completely, because no matter how bad it is, you wait 10 to 20 years, you can just reboot the franchise, whatever. Yeah. So that is one thing. You'll see, especially in my picks, a number of entries where, wait a minute, the franchise continued. Yes, but they sort of had to reboot the continuity to do so. And for me, that's sort of indicative of what the movie or storyline did to the franchise.
I actually tried to pick movies that really killed it for good.
So far.
So far, yes.
What is on our list, Nick? What is your number 3 pick for franchise killer?
I'm going to go with Back to the Future 3, which was not a bad movie.
Oh, it was fine.
It was a good movie. It just ended the franchise. Okay, the story is done. We don't need to do any more of this, Doc lives in the Far West with his time-traveling train. Marty's back in, the present. Okay, story done. In the late 80s, they were not as money-driven as now, I guess. And it's like they didn't need to...
Except that they were.
But they didn't need to milk that franchise to no end. It's like, we can make other ones now. He has a time-traveling train, He can go through all this. It's like, no. Back to the Future 3. Then it's done.
Yeah, I think as a number 3 pick, it's not bad. I think I would have objected if you had put it even at number 2. I'd have been like, come on now. Because they can continue if they want to. They chose not to, but I don't think it killed the franchise, because both of the heroes are still available for the next story if they want to.
They didn't make another movie, so the franchise is dead. It went silently in that good night. It wasn't murdered. It just,
Exactly, it wasn't killed.
It was killed from old age. Okay. Yeah, old age killed it.
Now you've convinced me the other way around. I'm bad picks are bad picks.
It's a great pick. You just don't see it. Making any other movie with that, destroy the legacy of the previous... No, I don't know why they didn't continue. They just stopped.
Well, that's the thing. I think they just stopped. I don't think the movie necessarily made them stop. It's just that they decided to stop. But let's get on to that conversation, because it's more interesting than us bickering about the semantics of killing for half an hour. I think I missed that. I miss the storytellers, movie makers' ability to just end the story without killing off all the characters.
And yet... they don't have Michael J. Fox, which is the sad thing, with his Parkinson. I guess he can do TVs, because I guess the schedule is not as bad, but I don't think him filming a 2-hour length movie would be, feasible. And, it's pretty hard to cast somebody else in his role. He's pretty,
Eric Stoltz. No,
Eric Stoltz, yeah. So I think it's also an example of a franchise being killed by the main actor kind of not being available anymore to do it.
Oh yeah, for sure. But again, not the movie.
Yeah.
But the actor. I agree that might be one of the reasons why we haven't seen a reboot in the aughts. Yeah. Certainly. But back in the day, this was before Michael J. Fox got diagnosed with Parkinson's, because he did Spin City and all that for a while. But I like the fact that they just went that's a nice place to leave our characters. Yeah. They're happy. You can imagine they're having a happy... ever after, and at the same time you can probably imagine them going through more hijinks, their types of personalities. That's what they would do, but we don't need to see it.
I mean, Doc has 2 kids now. You don't think the kids are going to steal a time-traveling machine and just have some hijinks somewhere in the past or in the future? Completely possible. But I guess even if the movie made some money, they figured, no, we're going to end it here. The end, that's it. We don't need to keep this going until one of the movies flops, and then the people are not interested anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Don't need to go Superman 4 Quest for Peace all over it.
Is that your number 3 choice, Dimitri?
No, it is not, because I actually think the Superman franchise died a slow and steady death. No, instead, I am going with somewhat of an obvious pick, which is why I'm just leaving it at my number 3 spot, and that's Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of Crystal Skulls.
Yeah.
And I'm okay, obviously they haven't made a sequel to that yet, and I'm hoping that they don't, and that's sort of the point. Is that before, everybody was like, yeah, Indiana Jones coming back. No, Indiana Jones. Oh, they're talking about making a new trilogy. Yeah, that's going to be awesome. Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of Crystal Skulls came out, and everybody like, do not make another one. Don't you dare.
Didn't nobody want to do that one except
George Lucas?
Yeah, money grubbing guy, I was going to say. Yeah,
well,
Lucas.
You cannot call George Lucas money grubbing. He gave a large part of his fortune to charity. Like a gigantic part of his fortune. He
still has a lot to remaining. But at that point, you know...
but come on.
I'm just kidding. Anyway. But, Spielberg didn't want to do it. Harrison Ford did not want to do it. But, he talked them into doing it. And it's like...
You know what? I don't know about that. It's so hard to read through the reports because a lot of it is so made up by the internet that has just turned on George Lucas.
Yeah.
But I don't know which reports to believe when they say things like that. Like, yeah, I've read some articles like, yeah, Spielberg has demonstrated he wasn't really interested in it to begin with. It was all George Lucas. But at the same time, I haven't actually heard Steven Spielberg say that.
That's a good point.
So, I don't know. Either way, they did make the movie, so they're responsible for it just the same.
Indeed. You don't want sequels with Shia LaBeouf as the new Indy?
I really, really don't. Like, I don't understand the idea of Mutt Williams as a successor character. It's like, he's not fun. He's sort of like this walking big bag of cliches. And he's played by Shia LaBeouf, who... It's not that I dislike Shia LaBeouf. Like, I really liked him in Lawless, for example. Not so much in Even Stevens, but...
Wow.
But, he's not like the guy you want to follow as an action hero.
You don't want him to be the one that filled Harrison Ford's shoes. Those are big shoes to fill, and really, no, he can't do it. Yeah. I've seen him act in many things, Indiana Jones being one of them, and doesn't have the charisma, honestly.
That's what it comes down to. He doesn't have that action hero charisma. He has another type of charisma. I think he's a little bit like Ben Affleck, where he's better at playing those sort of street level role, like these like guys who are smarter, who are the smartest people in the room. He's better at playing those guys than he is at playing that action hero who you root for when all the odds have turned against him. Like, that's not really the guy to play that.
Yeah.
And that's not knocking his acting abilities. Like, we'll be the only podcast not knocking his acting abilities. And it's really just like, it's a question of casting. It's a weird choice. More than that, though, is like, they made Harrison Ford old and tired and boring. And it's like, well... Now I can see the bridge between that and Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, I guess.
You said you would never mention those again. But
it's like, that's not where you want to leave your hero. You don't want to leave your hero as like, oh, he's old and tired and now he's going to get married because,
Why not?
It's like, that's not where you want to leave your action hero. No. You leave him like riding into the sunset, still young and awesome with the possibility of still being young forever, apparently.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's pretty much how they left it in the third one, because he was going to be young forever.
Yeah.
So.
And it goes down to what they did with your pick, Back to the Future, where it's like, no, they can still have adventures. You're just not going to see it. You're going to have to daydream about it. And that's the place you want to leave heroic characters.
Yeah.
So many mistakes in this thing.
Yeah.
So many mistakes. All right, what is your number 2 pick for franchise killers?
I'm going to go with Blade 3, which is a guy killing vampires. Now vampires are good, so I guess there is no interest in having evil vampires, that you have to go and kill. So it's probably one reason why they didn't continue with the Blade trilogy. Another one is that Wesley Snipes is in jail, which is... I
think he just got out, though.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Good for him. And Yeah, the third one was also kind of a mess because you really could see that Wesley Snipes was kind of allergic to sharing the spotlight and did not want to follow a script, which kind of messed up with the other actors. So, yeah, I guess if they had done a Blade 4, they would not have included him and just gotten the other two actors, Ryan Reynolds and Jessica Biel. But I don't know if fans would have gone for that.
Night Stalkers? Well, the problem is that Blade 3 is not a very good movie, so it wasn't a very good introduction to the Night Stalkers.
Yeah, that's true.
Because the characters themselves are kind of cool. Like, I love Jessica Biel as an action heroine. Like, the same way that I think, like, Shia LaBeouf, never an action hero. Jessica Biel, I totally see it. Like, I would love to see a series of action films centered on her playing the action hero, because I think she has exactly that type of charisma that I would look for in an action heroine. And Ryan Reynolds definitely has it, you know, if you forget his awful choice of movies in the last couple of years.
Yeah. No, that was back then when he was still, pretty good and, had good movies under his belt and not just terrible movies that are not actually of his fault.
Never is.
It's never really his fault. It's just he cannot save the script.
Yeah.
Is the thing.
And I think you could argue the same thing about Blade 3, where it's like he could not save the production. He was great in it.
How do we know what the script was supposed to be when Wesley Snipes kept going off of it all the whole time? It's like maybe it was a great script. We don't know.
Yeah, for people who don't know the story behind it, is director David Goyer and Wesley Snipes did not have a good relationship. And as you mentioned, Wesley Snipes did not like sharing the spotlight, and he tended to just do whatever in any given scene. For example, if you've seen Blade 3, there's a scene where they rescue Blade from the police station, and then Blade just goes up on the ceiling, well, like through the ceiling, and disappears, and then they run out of the police station after Ryan Reynolds makes a comment like, oh, what the hell?
Yeah.
And then when they get out of the police station, Blade comes back down with, like, I forgot my sword,
Yeah.
That had to be improvised because when they shot the scene in the police station, Wesley Snipes just went up in the ceiling without any explanation. And they couldn't get him to reshoot that without doing that. So they just had to write the story around it.
That's spectacular.
That's crazy.
I wonder if he realizes what he did to the movie, or if it's just
No, because he blames David Goyer for a bad movie.
That's spectacular.
And I don't know how good David Goyer is as a director. Like,
I guess we'll never know.
Well, no, I mean, like, he made The Unborn,
okay,
which has one of the worst posters ever, by the way. But but there's a poster where the tagline is, "It wants to be born, the unborn." Like, no, like, that's terrible.
Wow. Oh wow, that's crap.
But anyway, like, and it's decently shot and put together. I think he's probably a fine director, but yeah.
Yeah. So I guess they didn't want to work with Wesley Snipes, or I guess the studio had heard wind of what's happening. It's like, we're not working with him anymore, because you can't make a Blade 4 and just remove the Night Stalkers, and now it's Blade alone. All of a sudden, people are going to be like, well, I like these characters. Where are they?
Oh, I think you could get away with that in reality.
Yeah, I don't know though. Have them killed in the first 20 minutes.
You could take the actor from the TV show. I mean, they replaced him for the TV show.
That's true. Yeah, they could have done that, but I guess that franchise is like all good and dead now, because vampires are hot and sexy these days. They're not evil and, nasty.
A lot of people say that, and I actually disagree. What Stephanie Meyers with Twilight did is own it. Like, she made vampires sexy and whatnot, but she's not the first one to do it. Anne Rice had done it way before her.
Yeah.
But what she did when the movies came out, at least, and what the Twilight Saga has done, is own it. Make it so blatant that it's like you cannot fool yourself into thinking that vampires are not the new unicorn. They're not for girls, They totally are now.
Oh, because even Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Angel and Spikes, they still had their charm, and they were not just bloodthirsty killing machine. They were just,
Yeah, well, yeah, they were sex symbols.
Yeah, exactly. So vampires could still be sexy, but now they're basically, vampires are for girls.
Yeah, but at the same time, I find what it allows people to do though is to make a boy movie with vampires, like Blade would be.
Yeah.
And just like, okay, well, this is like this is sort of a boy vampire movie. It's not the same thing as a girl vampire movie, and
Yeah.
you could be fine. Whereas with the Anne Rice movies, you always sort of had to navigate because it was close enough to the boy vampire that you couldn't just do it a separate thing. But now you can because it's that's such an extreme. So in reality, I think it's actually freed up the vampire, not the other way around.
Okay.
It's just we just need some directors to take opportunity to make boy vampire movies if you feel like it. I guess that's my rant and my explanation to say stop whining about the Twilight girly vampires. They're there. They don't hurt anyone. You can still use your vampires to make manly vampire stories.
Yeah.
Learn to share your toys.
I guess.
That's all I'm saying.
But also, it's a Marvel franchise, and I think Marvel's pretty busy with other movies.
Well, they're trying to get Blade back, actually. They are actively trying to get Blade back.
Really?
Yeah.
From who has the rights?
A New Line. New Line
okay.
Cinema has the rights.
They haven't made anything with Blade, so that they should be getting it back very soon.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's what's gonna happen. And when they do, I think that's gonna be cool, man.
Yeah, yeah.
I have trouble imagining anyone but Wesley Snipes as Blade right now because he was so good at it. Look, he sounds crazy from what we've heard of the shooting of Blade 3. So
yeah,
that. Well, Blade Trinity, excuse me.
Yeah.
But he was good as Blade, though.
Yeah, the first one was spectacular.
Yeah.
Second one was very good too. And the third one, you're like, this is all over the place, but now we know why.
Yeah.
Number 2 franchise killer. What is yours, number 2?
My number 2 franchise killer is actually from the comic book industry.
Oh, really?
Yes. For close to 30 years since Chris Claremont took over the title, the Uncanny X-Men has been the number 1 comic book franchise being published. Now, you gotta appreciate what that means. 30 years of no one ever outselling it for more than a month or 2 at a time.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And then a storyline called House of M came out. Now, House of M had Magneto and the Scarlet Witch creating a universe where mutants were the majority. So far, so good. It was actually an interesting story about reverse racism, if you will. It was like this ultra-liberal society, but then the mutants were kind of racist towards the baseline humans, but in that sort of liberal way. Instead of being openly hostile, it's just like,
I'm going to accept you even though you're just a human kind of thing.
Kind of thing. Exactly. And it was sort of a clever way to expose a different type of racism that the X-Men can't really deal with in their normal universe.
Yeah.
It was kind of cool. And then at the end of that storyline, Scarlet Witch reversed everything, but she said no more mutants, which meant that they've essentially eliminated all mutants on Earth except for about 200 of them. That killed any chance of making stories for the future writers, because they no longer can make the usual X-Men story of oh, this guy is giving a bad name to mutants. What, all 200 of them? Oh no.
Yes.
They were no longer a minority.
They are a minority. They're just a very, very tiny minority, you know?
Yeah, they're on an extinction list.
Yeah,
so they're
exactly.
Not,
they're like the dodo, pretty much, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, as soon as those 200s are gone, we don't have to deal with this anymore, you know?
Exactly. So it made the parable sort of stupid.
Yeah.
And it was weird because Joe Quesada who is editor-in-chief, was going well, I always felt there were too many mutants. That's not a minority. And I'm like, do you know how many black people there are? How many gay people there are? How many Asian people there are in the world? A lot. Yeah, we're still a protected class. We're still a minority in North America. And we still get treated like crap on occasion by certain people.
Yeah.
That's what the X-Men are about.
Yeah.
And to say it's if there's more than 200, you're not a real minority is super offensive to the very crowd that the X-Men appeals to.
Yeah.
So, So, obviously the writers didn't know what to do with that storyline, because, what do you do? What do you do? The only thing you can do is have the X-Men try to reverse it. But having that issue after issue after issue is sort of super boring.
Yeah. Did they ever manage to reverse it?
Oh, yeah, they recently did. Finally, they've come around with that. But in terms of sales, it affected them greatly because X-Men, for the first time in 30 years, were no longer the number 1 comic. It was Batman for a while, and Avengers for a while, and Justice League for a while. But X-Men lost that spot and never quite gained it back.
Interesting. Why didn't they just... When did they start seeing those sales drop? Was it like during House of M, right after it, or, you know?
It was sometime after it. It was about 6 to 8 months after it. Okay. So it really was really a case of the audience going like, "Well, that's an interesting direction," and then reading the comics like, "No, it's not." Like, it's really what it comes down to.
That would have been interesting. It just, you know, the solve is just Scarlet Witch saying, "Okay, mutants like they were before, and just go back to what it is." But wow. No, I mean, I think it's just when you change the premise as well. It's not just, you know, some people might have seen that they're not really a minority or not, but you're just basically changing the whole premise of what people are used to for so long. Okay, there was House of M, and people were expecting, okay, it's a nice experiment. It's going to go back to normal after a while. So I'm going to keep on reading. But then it's like, no more mutant. No, you're changing it again. Okay, let's see how this goes. And then they realize that, oh, you're not changing it back to what it was before, kind of like the status quo. This is too weird for me, and they just stop reading, you know?
Maybe.
It happens a lot more than, you know, just a lot of people don't like change that much. So maybe that was just too big for them, and it's like, okay, you know, it's a good time for me to stop reading comic books, I guess, at this time, and that's what they did, you know?
Yeah, well, that's what it comes down to. Like, comic book fans, and I do mean I do read comic books, are addicts to a certain degree, especially X-Men fans. Like, you know, they spun off to 5, 6, 7, 8 titles, and I used to collect all of them, even though I liked maybe 3 of them.
Yeah.
Because you want to know what happens to the characters. Like, you're an addict. That's what it is. And when you make the buzz that you get from reading those bad enough, like you give us enough of a bad trip for enough of a long time, we start realizing that we're addicts. And that's the moment where we go like, well, I only have budget to collect this many comics. Does it really need to be all X-Men? I'm going to start by dropping X-Force and the third X-Men title and New Mutants or whatever. And then by the end of it, like, you're only collecting the main title and you're going like, that hasn't been good in a while.
Yeah.
Screw it. And then that's it. You've lost me forever.
Yeah. I understand exactly what you mean. It's not from comic book, but from online role-playing games, having been World of Warcraft for playing World of Warcraft for so long. And you play so much and then eventually, oh, PvP doesn't... Yeah, it's not as fun to me anymore. I'm just going to, you know, raid with people. And then, oh, this doesn't seem as fun anymore. I'm just going to start doing this. And eventually, when you're just raiding and raiding starts, you know, starts getting pretty boring, I'm just going to stop playing. And then you're like, oh, wow, I have so much free time now. And I'm saving $16 a month. And it's like, this is good. I'm never going back, you know? So I can totally see what it is with comic books the same way. And... yeah, once you drop it, you know, it's very hard to be getting hooked back. I don't know what Blizzard could do to get me to play World of Warcraft again. And save basically saying it's free now, you know, come and play. I might just go back once in a while to play it, but you know, you're not gonna get my money anymore because addiction broken. And so I'm guessing it's probably the same with you in comic books.
Oh yeah, that's exactly it. I'm not coming back. Like, even if they got good again, it was bad enough for long enough that I broke free, and I'm not coming back because it's money that I like having, and I like reading more interesting things than what happens to Cyclops, and I'm not going back. I'm on his 12-step programs is what I'm telling people.
You never apologize for all the wrongs you did to me. Was that step 6 or something?
I apologize for making you read the Age of Apocalypse revival a couple of years ago. Alrighty then, what is your top pick for franchise killer?
Mine is surprisingly a franchise that should have died so long ago, but this one was basically the coup de grace. It's Highlander: The Source. Highlander is a very long-lasting franchise. The fans are really, really into it. It survived Highlander 2, which basically spit on everything the first movie did, but fans were like, still... We forgive you for this one. Just keep making them, and we'll forget the 2 even happens. And
well, it's a TV show that saved it.
The TV show was great. Highlander 3 was kind of like, oh, we're sorry kind of movie. We're going back to basics. Highlander Endgame was okay. It was basically, we're going to be trying to make movies with Duncan MacLeod instead of Connor.
Yeah, actually, it depends on which version of Endgame you watch.
Yes.
Like, one of them is pretty cool. The other, not so much.
Yeah. But then in The Source, they basically go for the source of the immortality. And then you realize that, you know, the prize of there can only be one, which you've thought watching the whole series that they're all immortals. They chop their heads off to get the other person's power. When there's only one left, he gets the prize. But you learn at the end of the Swords that no, there can only be one. It's going to be the guy that's so nice and decides to stop fighting, and he gets the prize. And the prize is to have a kid. And every Highlander fan was like, "What?" The whole premise of Highlander is two guys fight with swords, and one of them chops the other heads off, rinse and repeat, and that's what we like. And all of a sudden, you're telling me that no, it's the person who stops fighting and starts loving everybody that gets the prize. You're like, oh, this is complete nonsense. And at that point, we're like, no, that's done. It's over. And The Swords was supposed to be the first of 3 movies.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because he gets, he wins the prize and he gets a kid. That kid was supposed to be the focus of the other movies. Stop dead. It's like, no. They got so much backlash that it literally killed the other 2 movies.
No, it's a terrible movie to begin with. Like, let alone the ending, which was peculiar.
Yeah.
It's really bad. Like, it's really boring and crap. Like,
it started actually pretty good. I kind of like The Guardian. Okay, you kind of need to make like a weird supernatural enemy to be a challenge to Duncan at this point, because he has killed a lot of immortals and he's really powerful. So it was cool. He started okay, and then he just got weirder and weirder, and he started being more of a joke than a bad guy towards the middle of the movie.
Absolutely.
And then at the end, you're the final fight where he just drills himself into the ground by spinning so fast. You're like, what is this?
Now, me and my problem, it's like, I agree with you. The beginning is fine. It was actually interesting. You're sort of wondering, oh, where is this all leading up to? They're setting up a lot of interesting ideas.
Yeah.
But for me, I got bored just watching a bunch of immortals just hacking their way through non-immortals, scene after scene after scene after scene. Like, at one point, I just look at them as like, you guys are just mass murder. Like, you're horrible people. Like, you don't get to treat people like this just because you're immortal.
They were immortal when they were hacking those, but they still had like thousands of years of, fighting knowledge. So it was basically them bullying a bunch of mortals.
It really is.
So at this point, you're like, okay, you see it once the first time. It's like, oh, this is kind of cool. They're working together instead of trying to chop each other's heads off. Okay. But then they do it again and again and again. You're like, okay, enough, guys. Come on.
All right. My number 1 pick, I guess, is my turn. I'm going to go with horror because that's what I do.
Of course.
It is a little movie called Halloween, Curse of Michael Myers, which is actually the 6th movie in the franchise.
Okay.
Now, some of you may have noticed that there's actually quite a few more movies than just 6 in the franchise. There's actually 10 so far.
Yeah.
But this is one of the movies that took it so far that they had to reboot the franchise a little bit for the next movie. Because they did Curse of Michael Myers, and then the next one was H2O, which was like Halloween 20 years later, and ignored everything that happened after part 2.
Okay.
They just erased everything else. And the reason for that is that you can't go forward after 6, because 6 starts with Michael Myers raping and impregnating his niece.
Oh, great. Great.
Because, pleasant.
Sure.
And then it turns into some stuff with, like, druids using magical satanic stones to control Michael Myers into bringing the devil through the birth of the child that he impregnated into his niece.
Okay.
And, that's when you go like, hey, maybe I would like to ignore that for my next movie.
The next movie could be him raising his child, It'd be awesome.
Man, it's so bad. It's, I say it's once in a while, but, like, it really is, like, somebody pooping on your couch. And it's like, at this point, I'd rather come to the party before that happened.
Why did they ignore, like, 3, 4, and 5 as well? It's just more convenient to ignore them as well?
Well, because the niece character was established in the 4th one. The 3rd one is, like, the standalone movie, so...
Okay.
The 4th one establishes the niece. The 5th one continues the niece story as a child. And the 6th one came out, and that's when she gets raped by her own uncle. And, like, let's not forget, like, the 4th and 5th one had the niece as a child, like a little girl. Like, so that's how we see her. And we start the 6th one. Admittedly, she's grown up. She's played by a different actress, but because the actress who played the little girl in the 4th and 5th went like, no, thank you.
Interesting.
And So, okay, so like at least they had the decency of not making her a child, but that's how we see her. That's how we remember the character. It's like, oh yeah, and her fate after surviving all these traumatic ordeals was to get raped by her monster of an uncle. Oh, thanks, movie. Disgusting.
Nice. They reboot the 7th one. They reboot starting from 1 to 7 basically, and then does it keep going?
It goes 8, and after 8, they decided to go the full reboot way and like just start over and do the remake.
Okay.
Because that was sort of what was popular back then.
Yeah.
So, and then 1 and 2, and then I think they're rebooting again for the 3rd one because people didn't like Rob Zombie's remake of Halloween and Halloween 2. I loved the second one. The first one I thought was too similar to the first one. What's the point?
Yeah.
But the second one I loved. But at the same time, it's sort of like I don't know where they could go from it. So I understand them just wanting to reboot the thing.
Yes, that series is like an old PC. I swear. You know, it's like...
That's awesome. I guess that's it for us.
Yeah.
If you have any questions, comments, you can write us at mail@idiomatic.com or post a comment at idiomatic.com. And we're also on Facebook. We're also on Twitter. We're also on iTunes. If you can like us on Facebook, we would super appreciate it. It helps us provide you regular content of certain quality.
Indeed. No need to reboot for us, you know. We just stay mediocre the whole time.